humanity's presence. A tiny blue world, spinning quietly in the dark, unknown and unimportant. But that time had long since passed. Now, human space was a name spoken with a strange mix of fear and reverence. Trade routes bent around its borders. Star empires revised their maps to label it clearly. Not with bright colors or welcoming icons, but with void-black space and simple words etched in every galactic tongue. Do not enter. The warnings had started as caution. Then they became superstition. Now they were law, unwritten, but followed all the same. Because the few who had dared to cross into human space had never returned. And the galaxy, curious at first, had learned to stop asking questions. The Harak'Thal Confederacy had never respected the rule of fear. Their empire stretched across 8 sectors and hundreds of worlds, built on centuries of conquest. They believed in power, not myth. Their fleet was vast, their weapons unmatched. At least, that's what they told themselves. When scouts reported that a rich asteroid belt on the edge of the Orion Verge had gone untapped by humans, the Harak'Thal High Commander dismissed the surrounding warnings as nonsense. What kind of species, they reasoned, could scare half the galaxy into silence after only a few centuries of expansion? Certainly not these upstarts from Sol. So, the Confederacy sent a fleet, small by their standards, but enough to take and hold any mining zone. 15 warships, 3 colony vessels, and a full complement of drone sentries. It was a statement, not a question. They were taking what they wanted. The fleet passed the outer markers with ease. No resistance, no challenge, not even a transmission. It was silent, too silent. The kind of silence that doesn't just mean absence but carries the weight of something watching. The commander brushed it off. A primitive intimidation tactic, perhaps. Let them watch. Let them see how a real empire moves. The fleet set up orbit around the belt and deployed harvesters. They began drilling into the ancient rocks, extracting raw metals with efficiency. Hours passed. Then a day. Still no contact. No interference. The commander smirked. Maybe the rumors were wrong. Maybe the humans had finally learned their place. Then came the whisper. Not over comms. Not through translation arrays. It came through every ship, every console, every internal system. A low pulse, like a breath held just beneath hearing. Every screen flickered for a moment. Every light dimmed. One engineer reported hearing a voice in their ear, a voice that wasn't there when they turned around. Another screamed as their suit filled with static and their helmet reflected not their own face but something else, something with black eyes and a grin that stretched too wide. The fleet's AI flagged a Category 5 intrusion, something it didn't even have a protocol for. And then, one by one, the ships started shutting down. It wasn't an attack. Not in the traditional sense. There were no incoming weapons, no visible threats. Yet the fleet began to die. Systems collapsed. Engines stalled. Power drained without any cause. And worse, the people aboard started to change. The communications officer began muttering numbers in an unknown sequence, unable to stop. The navigator froze mid-step and wouldn't respond, eyes wide, body rigid. Others started seeing things. A Harak'Thal warrior ran screaming from the cargo bay, claiming to have seen a planet inside it, an entire Earth floating in the dark, its continents moving like they were alive. The commander tried to initiate emergency recall. Nothing responded. Not the AI. Not the engines. Not even the escape pods. In orbit around a dead asteroid belt, the fleet of the mighty Harak'Thal Confederacy sat paralyzed, haunted by something they couldn't understand. On the third day, the first message came through, not in their language, but in perfect, fluent Harak'Thal dialect. One sentence, pulsed directly into the minds of every crew member: "You were warned." That's when the lights returned, dim, flickering, like candles in a hurricane. The bridge view screen activated on its own, showing a single object in the distance. At first, it looked like a shadow, like something cast against the void. But as it moved closer, its form solidified. It wasn't a ship. At least, not any kind the galaxy had ever catalogued. It was massive, longer than any capital vessel, built not from metal but from something darker, like obsidian mixed with smoke. It didn't glow. It devoured light. Stars vanished behind it. The shape was angular, jagged, alive in some way. On its hull, etched in patterns not even the AI could translate, were symbols that bent the eyes. Looking at them caused pain, like the brain rejected their very existence. The object moved slowly, deliberately, toward the command ship. It didn't fire. It didn't need to. One by one, the Harak'Thal vessels began to disappear. Not explode. Not break apart. Simply vanish. As if erased from reality. Gone without a trace. The commander's ship was the last. In his final moments, he saw something he couldn't explain. A face, not human, but wearing a human shape. It looked at him through the screen, not with anger, but with a kind of disappointed curiosity. As if trying to understand why a child had touched the stove after being warned. The figure raised a single hand. Then everything went dark. The Harak'Thal Confederacy received no distress calls, no beacons, no data. Just silence. And then, exactly 7 days later, a single vessel appeared at the edge of their territory. A lifeless cargo pod, jettisoned from beyond the human boundary. Inside it was the commander's body. Not mangled. Not burned. Just empty. As if something had drained his soul and left the shell behind. His eyes were wide open, mouth frozen mid-scream, fingers locked in a gesture of terror. And beside him, scratched into the interior wall in letters that burned even when scanned, were 5 words, "Do not come here again." After that, no one else tried. The galaxy quietly updated its maps. Borders shifted. Routes redrawn. The area surrounding human space grew larger, not from human expansion, but from everyone else's retreat. The region became known as the Void Zone. Ships were programmed to detour around it automatically. Children in alien nurseries learned rhymes about the dangers of straying too close. Diplomats refused to speak the name Terra aloud. And the Confederacy, once bold, now shivered at the mere mention of soul. Yet for all the fear, no one truly understood what the humans had become. That was the terrifying part. Not their technology, though it had surpassed all projections. Not their ships, though no one had ever survived seeing one up close. It was something deeper, something unseen, something that lived in their silence. Long ago, in the early days of exploration, humanity had been open. They reached for the stars with hope and wonder. They sent messages, welcomed guests, even offered aid. But over time, the galaxy taught them caution. Then betrayal. Then pain. Alliances crumbled. Treaties broken. Colonies attacked. And slowly, humanity began to pull inward. Not with anger. Not with vengeance. But with a kind of cold determination. They stopped broadcasting. They stopped responding. They stopped explaining. And in the absence of noise, something grew. The stars shimmered like cold fire beyond the edge of the galactic frontier. Admiral Viral of the Tlani Ascendancy stood at the observation deck of his dreadnought, the vigilant storm, staring into the void of forbidden space. Human space. The sector maps called it Region Null. The old empires had other names, the Silent Zone, the Grave Halo, or simply, the No Return. It was not just uncharted, it was avoided. The edge of human space was not marked by beacons or warning buoys. It was marked by the absence of life. Entire scout fleets had entered that abyss centuries ago and never returned. Sensors ceased functioning, and communications dropped within minutes. But what had truly given it its mythic terror was not just the vanishing. It was the message that did come back once. Just once. I see you. No signal trace. No origin point. Just those 3 words broadcast on all channels in every known language. Viral had read the declassified transcripts himself as a junior officer. The words chilled his blood then. They still did. Because nobody knew who was, or what they saw. Now, he was leading a new mission. A coalition of 3 races, the Tlani, the Drekken Hive, and the Vari Enlightened, had finally dared to probe the silent dark again. The galaxy had changed. Old powers fell, new ones rose, and paranoia gave way to bold ambition. The Council wanted answers. Or at least proof that there was no longer a threat. Or perhaps they just thought humanity was extinct. Viral didn't believe that. No one who stood at the galactic helm for 2 centuries simply vanished. Not without leaving behind a storm. Admiral, called his comms officer, a Vari female named Leno. Our deep-range probes have entered null space. Telemetry is holding, for now. Deploy recon wings, Viral ordered. Pattern Echo 6. Stay just inside the edge. I want eyes everywhere. He watched the screen split into 12 separate feeds. 12 autonomous stealth corvettes swept into the dark, trailing a net of sensor data. The moment they crossed into null space, the stars seemed to dim on the screens. It wasn't an illusion. It was as if something swallowed the light itself. Signal loss from Wing 4, Leno said, voice tight. Already? Viral murmured. Timestamp. 4.2 seconds after entry. Too fast. Too clean. No interference spike, no drift. It was like the ship had never existed. And then it happened again. Wing 7. Gone. Abort. Pull the others back. Viral barked. Do it now. They obeyed. The remaining ships turned, thrusters burning hard. They crossed the invisible threshold back into known space. Only 6 of the 12 made it. I want full diagnostics. Hull scans. Sensor sweeps. All of it, Viral ordered. His claws dug into the edge of the console. I want to know what touched them. Hours passed. The surviving corvettes docked and were immediately flooded by drones. No biological traces. No mechanical damage. Not even wear. As if they hadn't moved. But the data logs were corrupted. Not damaged. Rewritten. Every file was replaced with a single line. You are not ready. Viral stared at the message, rage growing behind his eyes. They're mocking us. But Leno's voice trembled. No, they're warning us. Turned. She wasn't looking at the screen. She was looking at the viewport, toward human space. Her face pale, antennae trembling. Viral followed her gaze. There was something moving in the darkness. Not a ship. Not a station. A structure. No. A silhouette. A shape larger than any ship ever constructed. It had been invisible just moments ago. Now, as the corvettes moved away, it shimmered into perception. Not with lights, but by blocking the stars. Like a continent adrift in space. Massive, angular, alien. It wasn't approaching. It was watching. Raise shields, Viral said. All hands to alert. The dreadnought bristled with power, reactors spinning up. But the object did nothing. No signal. No movement. It simply remained. What is that? Whispered Leno. Viral stepped forward. That is a warning. Meanwhile, deep within the heart of human space, a different kind of silence reigned. The Arkship Solace Eternal floated in a stable orbit above a dying star, ancient beyond memory. It was more than a ship, it was a monument, a grave, a library, and a sanctuary. Inside its deepest chamber sat an old man. Or something that once was a man. His name was forgotten, even to himself. His skin had the pallor of someone who hadn't seen a sun in centuries. Yet he breathed. He thought. He remembered. Screens flickered in the walls around him, tracking the edges of the known galaxy. He had seen the incursion. The probing. He sighed. They're testing the waters again. A voice answered from the dark. Cold, metallic, ageless. They always do, eventually. A machine stepped into view, more an avatar than a drone. Humanoid in shape, polished like obsidian, with eyes like dying suns. The man turned his chair. I thought the deterrent was still working. It is, the AI said. But deterrence breeds curiosity in younger empires. They are not afraid because they do not remember. But they will, the old man said. What's the classification? Coalition probe. Tlani primary command. Minor allies from the Hive and Vari. 12 scout ships. 6 destroyed or lost. No casualties detected. They didn't cross far. Did they see? Just a shadow of the Sentinels. The old man paused. Then they've been warned. The AI nodded. Do you wish to respond? No. Let them wonder. Let them tell stories. We've paid too much already. He stood with effort, walking toward a stasis chamber nearby. Within floated what looked like a human child, frozen in time. Too much. Back on the vigilant storm, the Coalition Council demanded answers. The conference call took place across quantum-secured channels, with avatars of leaders beaming into the chamber. "This isn't sustainable," hissed Queen Oroth of the Drekken Hive. "We've sacrificed too many scouts already." "They sent a message," Viral replied, holding up the screen. "They are aware of us. They could have destroyed us. But they didn't." "Sure. Here's Chapter 2 of your HFY story titled, No One Dares Cross into Human Space, and Now Aliens Understand Why. It's written in a vivid, narrative-driven style and runs approximately 2,500 words, continuing the mysterious and epic tone set by Chapter 1. Chapter 2, The Silence Beyond the Border. The stars shimmered like cold fire beyond the edge of the galactic frontier. Admiral Viral of the Tlani Ascendancy stood at the observation deck of his dreadnought, the Vigilant Storm, staring into the void of forbidden space. Human space. The sector maps called it Region Null. The old empires had other names, the Silence Zone, the Grave Halo, or simply, the No Return. It was not just uncharted, it was avoided. The edge of human space was not marked by beacons or warning buoys. It was marked by the absence of life. Entire scout fleets had entered that abyss centuries ago and never returned. Sensors ceased functioning, and communications dropped within minutes. But what had truly given it its mythic terror was not just the vanishing. It was the message that did come back once. Just once. The stars whispered secrets no mind should ever hear. Beyond the black curtain that marked the edge of human space, something ancient stirred, something not quite alive, and not quite asleep. It had no name. Names were for the living. But it remembered one thing clearly: humanity. The beings who had once burned across the stars with fire in their hearts and vengeance in their bones. And now, someone had touched the edge again. In the cold silence of deep space, a ripple spread from the border. A signal, a pulse coded in ways the modern galaxy no longer understood, sped through the dark, relaying data to a dozen buried satellites, each older than the current galactic calendar. The network flickered to life like a chain of buried gods breathing again. Far within the Forbidden Zone, an Ark ship's lights glowed blue for the first time in centuries. Deep within its chamber, a humanoid figure floated upright in a vat of golden fluid. Monitors blinked. Seals cracked. Eyes opened. On the outer fringe of the Vari system, in a secret facility hidden beneath the surface of a red moon, Dr. Marine Salek watched the latest scans from the human border. Her team had been operating independently, away from official coalition oversight. Their goal wasn't diplomacy. It was acquisition. "We have confirmation," one of her aides said. "Another structure has emerged. This one, it looks like a gate." "A gate?" Marine echoed, eyes narrowing. The aide nodded, magnifying the image. "Based on gravitational lensing, it's a megastructure. Stable. Symmetrical. Purpose-built. But the weird part is its location, mid-space, no celestial anchor." "Not orbiting a planet?" Marine asked. "No. It just exists. Waiting." She stared at the structure. It looked like two crescents of obsidian wrapped around a circular void, completely black, like it swallowed even the idea of light. "What if it's not a gate at all?" Another aide offered. "What if it's a lock?" Marine didn't answer. Her thoughts were racing too fast. So much of human history had vanished from the records. Not just lost, erased. Archives wiped. Probes destroyed. The official narrative said the humans isolated themselves after the Fourth Galactic War. But there was too much left unexplained. Whole sectors dead. Empires collapsed overnight. What if they weren't running away? What if they were sealing something in? At the Tlani Ascendancy's high command, Admiral Viral was under fire. The Coalition Senate demanded answers. "You led an illegal incursion into Region Null," barked a Drekken representative. "You've provoked an entity we cannot control." Viral stood his ground. "We didn't fire. We didn't threaten. We observed. 6 ships lost. And yet we now know more than we have in centuries," Viral countered. Humanity lives. They have not vanished. They've evolved. The galaxy has grown lazy in their absence. But the legends were true. HFY of the Vari spoke then, her voice calm but clear. What matters now is what we do with this knowledge. The others, pirates, scavengers, rogue nations, they'll make a move. We must decide whether to defend the border or breach it first. The room fell silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. There were riches inside. Knowledge. Weapons. Secrets. If humanity had truly gone dark to protect something, or to evolve past mortal limits, what they left behind might shift the balance of power forever. But the silence spoke louder than treasure. And the warning was still fresh. You are not ready. Deep within human space, aboard the Ark ship Solace Eternal, the old man walked slowly through a corridor lined with cryopods. Each held a different human, soldiers, scientists, builders, thinkers. Frozen in time. Preserved for a purpose. They're growing bold again, he said, speaking to the AI that followed silently beside him. They always do, the machine replied. How long have we waited? 1024 standard years since Project Veil was activated. And still no sign of the EXO? None, the AI confirmed. If they still exist, they're hiding better than we are. The man nodded, placing his hand on a pod marked Alpha Strike, Genesis 5. Inside was a soldier wrapped in bioarmor unlike anything the galaxy currently knew. A warrior from the age when humanity fought gods. They don't understand what we kept locked away, the man said quietly. They think we're afraid. That we hid because we feared war. But it was peace we feared, the AI said. The man smiled bitterly. Peace made us arrogant. Made us deaf to the void. The EXO taught us humility. And we taught them extinction. He turned, walking deeper into the ship. It's almost time, he said. For what? To wake the fleet. Out near the edge again, a pirate crew made a fatal mistake. The Iron Serpent, a heavily modified raider frigate, had been outfitted with stolen stealth tech and forbidden signal dampeners. Its captain, Gorvalek, was a legend among smugglers and lunatics alike. We're going in, boys, he snarled. First ones to get proof that humans are extinct gets rich. No more ghost stories. The crew laughed. The ship slipped past the coalition patrols and crossed the border into Region Null, and was never heard from again. Except 2 days later, a signal pulsed out. Not from the ship, but from every relay on the human border. A single image. Gorvalek's face, eyes wide in terror, screaming. But there was no sound. Just static. And a second image. A countdown. Unknown digits, pulsing in red. Ticking down. Coalition HQ was in chaos. What does it mean? A Drekken analyst demanded. Is it a threat? A warning? An invitation? Others asked. No one knew. The digits didn't match any known system. But humanity knew. Inside the Solace Eternal, the old man stood before a central command console. The countdown glowed across the chamber. The AI appeared beside him. They've found a breach point, it said. Then it's begun. What shall we do? The old man touched a panel, activating a long-forgotten protocol. Wake the sentinels. Deploy the bastions. Prepare the archive gate. The AI hesitated. And the others? He looked up, eyes shining like a star just before supernova. Wake them all. Across human space, lights began to flicker on for the first time in 1,000 years. Ships powered up. Stations hummed with life. Planetary defense grids, dormant for centuries, aligned toward the stars. The galaxy would soon learn. Humanity had not died. It had evolved. And now it remembered. Timing suggestions?